Hi, I'm Steve Weinrebe, and I bet you didn't know Photoshop has some artificial intelligence built into it. Well, it does with the Quick Selection tool. The Quick Selection tool is the fourth tool down in the toolbar, and the tool can be taught. You can actually teach the Quick Selection tool what you want in a selection, and it will learn what you don't want in a selection. So I'm going to show you how to teach it. Okay, here we are in Photoshop, and the Quick Selection tool is the fourth tool down in the toolbar. Does double duty with the magic wand tool. And the Quick Selection tool is a tool that paints selection. So it works with a brush that looks like a brush cursor and has a size to it or a diameter. You can change the size of the brush from this palette up in the options bar, or you can use the right or left bracket keys on your keyboard. Right bracket makes the brush bigger, as it does with all brushes in Photoshop, and left bracket makes the brush smaller. Now, there are two ways this tool can learn and be taught. One is that as you're making a selection, the tool will build an awareness of what you're making a selection of. Let's say I wanted to change this model's hair, maybe the contrast or the color. I need a very fine selection of the hair. I might use Refine Edge, but first I would need to build a rough selection of the hair, and the Quick Selection tool is a good candidate to do a rough selection for sure. So I would start making a selection. Notice as I make a selection, up here in the options bar, the tool instantly goes into add to selection mode. In other words, this is the only tool that automatically goes into add to selection mode. You don't need to hold down the shift key as you might with the other tools or click the add to selection button. So as I start making the selection, that's one little trick of the tool, but notice that the face pops into the selection. So I'm going to go into subtract from selection mode by pressing the Alt key. And as I start subtracting from the selection stops at the hair, not popping back into the hair. In other words, the initial selection couldn't differentiate the edge between the hair and the face, but when I alter the selection, the tool's now a little smarter. It does see the differentiation between the face and the hair. So I can continue making my selection here, and let me just use a smaller brush. Come down here, a little bit of the shirt gets added. So again, I'll press Alt Windows or Option Mac and subtract a little bit of the hair. And then if I add a little bit more of the hair down there, the shirt doesn't get added. So that's one way that the selection tool, the Quick Selection tool, knows as you start adding and subtracting from your selection, it builds an awareness of what you're making a selection of. Let me do a little bit of a selection down here and see how the background got added. But I'm going to again press Alt Windows or Option Mac to go into subtract from selection mode, subtract that little bit of background, and then when I add a little bit back in, notice it doesn't pop into the background. So the tool is smart that way. Let's deselect, and I'm going to show you how you can actually teach the tool before you've even made a selection. Let's move over here to this model on the right, and let's say we want to make a selection of the model's shirt, maybe to change the color of the shirt or do some other enhancement. So I'm going to start painting a selection in the model's shirt, and as I do, and I come down here, notice that some of the hair gets added to the selection. Maybe the hair is close in color, that reddish brown color. And the shirt's a little out of focus and the hair is soft, so there's a little bit of a texture similarity. Let me continue on here, and when I get close to the hand, notice a little bit of the palm gets added to the selection. So that's another part that I don't want added to the selection. Now I could deselect that, but before I do, I'm just going to start from scratch again. I'm going to go Select, Deselect, and I'm going to come down here and just make a little bit of a selection anywhere in the shirt. Doesn't matter where, just anywhere in the area that you're making a selection of, make a little bit of a selection. And then I'm going to hold down Alt Windows or Option on the Mac, and I'm going to drag over the hair. Now, the hair isn't selected. I'm not deselecting it. I'm just telling the tool, teaching the tool, I don't want the hair in the selection. Notice when I let go of the mouse on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, the tool thinks for a second, or Photoshop thinks for a second. Now I'm going to come up here and do the same thing on the hand. I'm going to hold down the Alt, Windows, or Option Mac key, go into Subtract from Selection Mode, and I'm going to paint over the hand, and I'm going to paint over the neck. And what the heck, I'll just paint over the little bit of the shirt there, t-shirt too. And I've taught the tool, I don't want those areas in the selection. So now I'm going back and adding to my selection, finishing off, making the selection. Notice when I come down here, the hair doesn't get added to the selection. And when I come up here, the t-shirt and the palm don't get added to the selection. I can get right up close to the palm and they don't get added to the selection. Even the tool sees in that little V there where I originally deselected not to select that area. So that's how you can teach the quick selection tool. Paint over the areas that you don't want in the selection, and then you can go ahead and finish off your selection. That's your Photoshop quick tip for today. My name's Steve Weinrebe. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video.